What happens when a woman known for her quiet power, her measured pauses, and a career built on restraint finally decides she has had enough? On live television, no less. What happens when Meryl Streep, the most respected actress of her generation, sits across from Sunny Hostin and the conversation slips from polite curiosity into something sharp, personal, and impossible to walk back? Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to Prime Talk, hit that like button, and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from, because moments like this don't happen often, and when they do, you don't want to miss a second. The lights in the studio are warm, almost flattering, bouncing softly off the familiar pastel set of The View. The audience settles into their seats, some whispering, some scrolling on their phones, unaware that they are about to witness a moment that will ripple far beyond this room. Meryl Streep sits upright on the couch, hands folded loosely in her lap. She's smiling, but it's the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes, a professional smile, perfected over decades of interviews. Across from her, Sunny Hostin leans slightly forward, cue cards resting on her knee, posture alert, gaze sharp. This isn't her first high-profile interview, and it won't be her last. Still, there's something in the air tonight that feels heavier than usual. The conversation begins smoothly enough. Meryl speaks about her latest film, about aging in Hollywood, about the quiet strength of women who refuse to disappear. Her voice is calm, deliberate, each word chosen with care. The audience nods along, applauding softly at all the right moments. Sunny listens, nodding too, but her expression suggests she's already thinking 3 questions ahead. Then the shift happens. Sunny pivots the conversation, her tone still polite but edged with intent. She brings up activism, responsibility, influence. She mentions past comments, moments where Meryl used her platform in ways that sparked controversy. The words are framed as questions, but they land more like accusations. Meryl's smile tightens, just a fraction. She adjusts her posture, crossing one leg over the other, a small movement that signals something internal has changed. Well, Meryl begins, her voice still even. I think it's important to remember that artists aren't politicians. Sunny doesn't let it rest. She leans in further, eyebrows raised. But when you have a platform as large as yours, isn't silence also a statement? There's a murmur in the audience. A few heads turn. Meryl pauses. It's not a dramatic pause. It's thoughtful, controlled, but it stretches just long enough to make people uncomfortable. She inhales slowly, as if steadying herself. I've never been silent, she says. I've just been careful. Sunny presses on. Careful for whom, though? Because some would argue that caution from someone in your position looks a lot like privilege. The word hangs in the air. Privilege. The studio feels smaller now, tighter. Meryl's eyes flick briefly toward the audience, then back to Sunny. When she speaks again, her voice is softer, but there's steel underneath it. I grew up watching women who spoke loudly get dismissed, Meryl says. I learned early that sometimes the most effective voice is the one people actually listen to. Sunny tilts her head, unconvinced. But doesn't that approach risk protecting the status quo? The tension is unmistakable now. The other hosts shift in their seats, sensing they've crossed into unpredictable territory. The audience is silent, hanging on every word. Meryl uncrosses her legs, leans forward slightly, hands now resting openly on her knees. Sunny, she says, and the use of her name changes everything. I don't accept the idea that there is only one correct way to stand up for what's right. Sunny's lips part as if to respond, but Meryl continues, her voice gaining strength. I've spent my entire career navigating rooms where women weren't supposed to have authority. I didn't get here by shouting over people. I got here by outlasting them. A ripple of applause breaks out, tentative at first, then stronger. Sunny raises a hand, attempting to reclaim control of the conversation. I'm not questioning your success, she says quickly. I'm questioning the impact. Meryl nods slowly. And I'm questioning the assumption that impact must look the same for everyone. The studio feels electric now. You can almost hear the collective breath being held. Meryl straightens fully, her voice clear, unwavering. You asked about silence. Let me be clear. Silence is when you have nothing to say. What I choose is discernment. The word lands hard. Discernment. Sunny blinks, momentarily thrown off. For the first time, she doesn't jump in immediately. That split second, barely noticeable to a casual viewer, feels monumental. Meryl continues, not unkindly, but firmly. I don't owe anyone performative outrage. I owe honesty, integrity, and the humility to know when my voice helps and when it might drown out someone else's. The audience erupts now, applause filling the studio. Some stand. Cameras pan quickly, catching reactions, widened eyes, nodding heads, stunned expressions. Sunny forces a smile, nodding along, but her usual composure has cracked. She tries to steer the conversation back, thanking Meryl, transitioning to the next host, but the moment has already escaped her grasp. Meryl leans back, the tension easing slightly from her shoulders. She hasn't raised her voice. She hasn't insulted anyone. And yet, somehow, the message is unmistakable. The balance of power has shifted, live on air, in front of millions. As the segment moves on, the audience can't stop buzzing. Phones are already out. Clips are being replayed in real time. Somewhere behind the cameras, producers exchange glances, knowing they've just captured something rare, a moment where restraint spoke louder than interruption, where authority didn't demand attention, it commanded it. And this was only the beginning. The applause fades, but the tension doesn't. It lingers in the studio like static after a lightning strike, invisible yet impossible to ignore. The cameras keep rolling, red lights blinking softly, and everyone knows they are still very much live. Meryl Streep sits composed, her face calm, but beneath the surface, something has shifted. Across from her, Sunny Hostin straightens her notes, her movements slightly more rigid than before, as if reminding herself she's still in control of this table, this show, this moment. The conversation resumes, but it's no longer the same. There's a new undercurrent now, a quiet battle for footing. Sunny clears her throat, offering a polite segue, but her voice carries a sharper edge than earlier. Meryl, she says, smiling tightly, I want to stay on this for just a moment, because I think viewers at home are grappling with this idea of responsibility versus restraint. Meryl nods slowly, eyes steady. That's fair. Sunny takes the opening. Do you ever worry that restraint can be interpreted as avoidance? The audience shifts again. A few murmurs ripple through the rows. Meryl inhales, measured, deliberate. This time, she doesn't answer immediately. She looks at Sunny, not defensively, not challengingly, but directly. It's the look of someone who has spent a lifetime being underestimated and no longer feels the need to rush. I worry far more, Meryl says at last, about being misunderstood than being criticized. Sunny arches an eyebrow. But isn't misunderstanding exactly what happens when people don't hear you clearly? Meryl's lips curve into a faint, knowing smile. Sometimes, she replies, people hear exactly what they are ready to hear. That lands differently. The audience responds with a low, collective ooh, followed by scattered applause. Sunny exhales through her nose, nodding as if acknowledging the point, but her grip on the cue cards tightens. She presses on. You've been vocal about gender equality in Hollywood, Sunny says. Yet some activists feel voices like yours could do more, say more, especially in moments of crisis. Meryl tilts her head slightly. Crisis for whom? Sunny doesn't hesitate. For women without your protection. Without your access. The studio goes quiet again. This isn't a hypothetical anymore. It's personal. One of the co-hosts glances nervously between them, sensing the escalation. Meryl's expression shifts, not to anger, but to something heavier. Resolve. I've sat with women who lost everything because they spoke before the world was ready to listen, Meryl says. Her voice is still calm, but it carries weight now. Careers ended. Families strained. Names dragged through the mud. I don't forget that. Sunny responds quickly. But doesn't progress require risk? Yes, Meryl says. But it also requires strategy. That word again. Strategy. The audience reacts, louder this time. Meryl leans forward, elbows resting lightly on her knees, posture open but grounded. I don't believe in sacrificing people to make a point, she continues. And I don't believe that being loud is the same as being effective. Sunny opens her mouth, then closes it. For a brief moment, she seems unsure of how to counter that without appearing dismissive. She recovers quickly. Some would say, Sunny replies, that caution from powerful voices delays change. Meryl nods once. And some would say, she answers evenly, that reckless noise can derail it. The applause this time is immediate and strong. The camera cuts to the audience, faces lit with surprise, approval, even admiration. Social media producers backstage are already flagging trending keywords. The energy in the room has shifted again, further away from debate and closer to reckoning. Sunny laughs lightly, attempting to soften the moment. You're very good at this, she says. Meryl smiles politely. I've had a lot of practice being questioned. That line draws laughter and applause, but there's truth beneath it that isn't lost on anyone. Sunny chuckles, but the laugh doesn't quite reach her eyes. She glances down at her notes, then back up. I just want to be clear, Sunny says. I'm not attacking you. Meryl's gaze doesn't waver. I know, she replies gently. But intention doesn't erase impact. The studio reacts instantly, applause swelling, a few gasps. That sentence lands like a mirror turned back toward the table. Sunny blinks, momentarily frozen. One of the other hosts shifts, sensing the gravity of what was just said. Sunny nods slowly. That's true, she admits. It goes both ways. Meryl inclines her head. Exactly. For a moment, neither speaks. The silence is thick, charged, and undeniably uncomfortable. The kind of silence live television dreads but audiences crave. Sunny finally breaks it, her tone more cautious now. So where do we go from here? She asks. Meryl leans back slightly, folding her hands again, her composure fully intact. We listen, she says. Not just to respond, but to understand. And we allow different approaches to coexist without questioning each other's integrity. The audience applauds, some standing again. Sunny forces another smile, nodding, but it's clear the dynamic has changed. She isn't steering anymore, she's reacting. The segment wraps shortly after, but the moment doesn't dissipate. As the show cuts to a commercial break, the energy backstage is frantic. Producers whisper urgently. Assistants check phones, eyes widening at the flood of notifications. Clips are already circulating online, captions forming narratives in real time. Meryl rises during the break, exchanging brief, polite words with the hosts. Sunny maintains professionalism, but there's a tightness in her jaw now, a subtle sign of frustration. When the cameras return, the show moves on, but viewers know something rare just happened. This wasn't shouting. This wasn't chaos. This was control, quiet, deliberate, and devastatingly effective. And outside the studio walls, the conversation was only just beginning. By the time the show moves into its next segment, the confrontation has already escaped the studio. It's living a second life now, on phones, on feeds, in group chats lighting up across the country. Hashtags begin to form, fast and unfiltered. Short clips loop endlessly, replaying Meryl Streep's calm delivery and Sunny Hostin's increasingly guarded responses. But inside the studio, the air remains thick, as if the moment itself refuses to leave. Meryl sits quietly, listening as another guest speaks, but her mind is elsewhere. Years of media training haven't dulled her awareness. She can feel the shift, the way eyes flick toward her when they think she isn't looking. She knows this is how narratives are born, not in the shouting, but in the aftermath. Sunny, meanwhile, keeps her posture upright, shoulders squared, professionalism locked firmly in place. Yet every so often, her gaze drifts off camera, toward the producers, toward the monitors, toward whatever damage control might already be unfolding. When the show cuts to another brief break, the tension resurfaces instantly. Microphones are muted, but the body language speaks volumes. Sunny leans back, exhales, then leans forward again, clearly wrestling with whether to let the moment pass or reclaim it. Meryl remains still, composed, hands folded, her expression unreadable. As the cameras come back on, Sunny pivots unexpectedly. Meryl, she says, turning toward her again, I want to revisit something you said earlier. There's an audible intake of breath from the audience. Meryl looks up, surprised but unflinching. All right, she says. Sunny's tone is measured now, slower, as if choosing each word with care. You talked about discernment, about knowing when to speak and when not to. But do you think there's a risk that people in power get to define discernment in ways that serve them? The question is sharper than it sounds. It reframes everything. A few audience members murmur. Meryl's jaw tightens slightly, the first visible crack in her serenity. Not anger, reflection. I think power complicates everything, Meryl replies, including good intentions. Sunny nods. Then how do we trust it? That's the real question, the one hiding beneath all the others. Meryl leans forward again, this time more slowly, as if grounding herself. We don't, she says simply. We question it, constantly, including our own. The audience reacts instantly, applause breaking out again. Sunny pauses, absorbing that. She hadn't expected agreement, at least not so plainly. But questioning isn't enough for some people, Sunny counters. They want accountability. Meryl's eyes lock onto hers. So do I. The firmness in her voice draws another wave of applause. One of the co-hosts interjects lightly, trying to ease the intensity, but the focus remains locked on the exchange. Sunny turns slightly, acknowledging the interruption, then returns to Meryl. Accountability means answers, Sunny says. And sometimes those answers are uncomfortable. Meryl nods. I'm not afraid of discomfort, she says. I'm afraid of simplification. That line hits hard. The audience murmurs, some nodding, others frowning. Sunny presses her lips together, considering her next move. Some would say, she begins, then stops herself, choosing a different approach. Do you think this conversation would be different if you weren't who you are? The room goes still. That question strips away abstraction and lands squarely on identity, status, legacy. Meryl doesn't deflect. Yes, she says. Absolutely. Sunny leans in. How so? Because people project onto me, Meryl answers. Their hopes, their frustrations, their disappointments. I become a symbol instead of a person. And symbols are easier to criticize than humans. There's something raw in her voice now, a vulnerability that hasn't been present before. The audience quiets, listening. I don't get the luxury of being wrong in private, Meryl continues. Every misstep becomes a referendum. Sunny softens, just slightly. That comes with influence. Yes, Meryl agrees. And it comes with isolation. That word lands differently. Isolation. The applause that follows is gentler, more empathetic. Sunny nods, absorbing the shift. But influence also means people listen, Sunny says. Including those who feel unheard. Meryl meets her gaze. Which is why I listen first. The exchange feels less like a battle now and more like a standoff turning into something else. Mutual recognition, perhaps. But the tension hasn't vanished. It's transformed. Sunny takes a breath. Do you think moments like this, public moments, help or hurt that listening? Meryl considers the question carefully. They help, she says slowly. If we allow complexity. They hurt if we turn them into verdicts. The audience applauds again, louder this time. The co-hosts glance at one another, sensing they are witnessing something unusually substantive for daytime television. Sunny smiles faintly. You're asking for nuance in a world that prefers sound bites. Meryl smiles back, just as faintly. I've always preferred long conversations. Laughter ripples through the audience, easing the tension for a brief moment. But the impact of what's been said lingers. As the segment finally moves toward its conclusion, Sunny thanks Meryl, her tone sincere but layered. Meryl responds graciously. Yet viewers can tell this wasn't a neat resolution. There's no winner declared, no apology offered, no tidy bow tied around the exchange. Instead, there's something messier and more compelling. When the show cuts to commercial, the audience erupts into chatter. People turn to each other, debating what they just saw. Backstage, producers watch the metrics climb in real time. The clip is trending. Comment sections are filling with polarized takes, passionate defenses, sharp critiques. And in homes across America, viewers lean closer to their screens, sensing that the final act of this moment, its true impact, has yet to unfold. By the time the closing credits roll, the moment no longer belongs to the studio. It belongs to the audience now, to the millions of viewers who watched live, and the millions more who are discovering it clip by clip, comment by comment, hour by hour. What happened between Meryl Streep and Sunny Hostin doesn't fade when the cameras shut off. It detonates quietly, then spreads. Outside the studio, reporters gather faster than usual. Assistants rush past with phones pressed to their ears. Inside, the audience files out buzzing, voices overlapping, arguments already forming. Some people shake their heads in disbelief. Others replay Meryl's words aloud, savoring them. A few defend Sunny passionately, insisting the questions needed to be asked. No one is indifferent. That's the thing everyone agrees on. Meryl exits through a side door, coat draped over her arm, expression composed but distant. She smiles politely when a producer thanks her, nods to a stagehand, and disappears into a waiting car. Inside, she finally exhales. She didn't plan to silence anyone. She didn't come in ready for a showdown. But she knows what it looked like. And she knows how it will be framed. Sunny remains behind a moment longer, conferring with producers, her posture straight, her voice professional. She's done this long enough to understand how quickly a narrative hardens. She scrolls through her phone briefly, then locks the screen, jaw tightening. She doesn't look angry. She looks resolute. Whatever this becomes, she intends to meet it head-on. Within minutes, social media explodes. Short clips circulate with bold captions. Meryl Streep shuts down Sunny Hostin. Sunny Hostin pushes too far. A masterclass in calm power. The edits are ruthless, compressing nuance into seconds. One line, "I don't owe anyone performative outrage," is repeated endlessly, set to dramatic music, stitched with reaction shots. Another, "Intention doesn't erase impact," becomes a rallying cry in comment sections, used by both sides to argue entirely opposite points. Celebrities weigh in. Some praise Meryl's restraint, calling it elegant, overdue, iconic. Others defend Sunny, applauding her for asking uncomfortable questions on a platform that rarely allows discomfort to breathe. Journalists publish think pieces within hours. Was this a generational clash? A debate about activism? A lesson in power dynamics? Everyone sees something different, and that's precisely why it refuses to die. Morning shows replay the exchange the next day. Panels dissect body language, tone, pauses. Experts debate whether Meryl's calm was empowering or dismissive, whether Sunny's persistence was necessary or miscalculated. Polls pop up online. Comments stretch into the thousands, then the hundreds of thousands. In living rooms across the country, people argue. Parents and kids. Friends. Co-workers. Some say Meryl reminded the world that authority doesn't need volume. Others insist Sunny gave voice to frustrations too often brushed aside by polished answers. The moment becomes a Rorschach test, revealing more about the viewer than the interview itself. And then there's the audience in the room that day. Several later describe it the same way. They felt like they were watching something unscripted, something risky. Not chaos, not cruelty, but a collision of perspectives that refused to flatten itself for comfort. One audience member posts, "I've never seen daytime TV get that quiet." Another writes, "That silence said more than any shouting match ever could." Sunny addresses it days later, calmly, on another episode. She stands by her questions. She emphasizes accountability, dialogue, the importance of pressing power respectfully but firmly. She doesn't apologize. She doesn't attack. She reframes. Some viewers applaud her. Others say it came too late. The divide remains. Meryl never issues a statement. She doesn't tweet. She doesn't clarify. And somehow, that choice becomes part of the story too. To some, it proves her point. To others, it reinforces the critique. The conversation keeps moving without her, fueled by her words but no longer controlled by them. And maybe that's the real aftermath. Not a winner, not a loser, but a moment that cracked open something deeper, a public reckoning about how we speak, who we expect to speak, and what we demand from those we elevate. It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was precise. And in its precision, it unsettled people far more than any shouting match ever could. Weeks later, the clip still resurfaces. New viewers discover it as if it just happened. The comments keep coming. The debate keeps evolving. Because what unfolded wasn't just an on-air confrontation. It was a mirror, held up live, reflecting our expectations back at us in real time. So now it's your turn. Did Meryl Streep reclaim the conversation with quiet authority? Or did Sunny Hostin do exactly what she was supposed to do by challenging power on a public platform? Was this a moment of grace, of tension, or of unresolved truth? Let us know what you think in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs to see it. And if you want more explosive, cinematic, and emotionally charged stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to Prime Talk. Because the moments everyone argues about are the moments we live inside, together.